Hello jewelry class, this is Mrs. Gardner, and I'm going to show you some basics on mixing some epoxy resin, which has a little bit less odor. It's nice for smaller items, like for jewelry, of course, since that's our class. And there's different brands, but there are certain things you need to have for safety precautions. Of course, you should have your hair pulled back. You should have good ventilation. Even if you can't smell it, doesn't mean it's okay. So low odor is nice, but still. And you should definitely wear gloves and have some spare gloves handy. Now, I know latex is pretty common, but not as great as protection. So the vinyl type is better if you can get that. If you don't have it, switch out latex gloves if they get dirty. Just keep switching them out. And it has some stir sticks, popsicle sticks, basically. And a couple little containers. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's crucial with most epoxy resins. So equal amounts, in other words. So I have a little cup here I'm going to mix like an ounce. An ounce is about the least you'd want to mix to get a good mix. Resin, and I'm going to have the same amount of hardener. And I have them right here. I happen to be using Easy Cast. There's some brands they suggest you warm it up a little bit, as long as you make sure it's no water gets near the resin, of course, or it'll cause it not to cure properly. I always like to have either baby wipes or disinfectant wipes, just to kind of cut the oil if it gets on something. So I'm going to get some of this stuff out of the way. Let's see. I know it's a pretty sharp angle here. Here's a little pipette. That comes in really handy. When the resin's a little bit warmer, this room is really cold, this art room's cold. So it would make the viscosity kind of thick, which makes it hard to work with sometimes, and the bubbles can't escape. So sometimes I, warm it up a little bit. Oops, I'm getting stuck already. And so I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'll probably have to, it's good to have it on level, very level. Let's see, I'm looking for the measurement. I'm going to turn it around a little bit. There it is. I just dripped on myself. If you get a little too much in one, then when you go to measure the opposite, make sure you just get it equal. That's important. Okay, and I got a little paper towel handy, so I can kind of wipe the lip a little bit there. Get the correct cap on a correct one. That's nice. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and pour this one. Looking for the measurement. Okay, looks like I have it. There's the cap. It's always good to have someone to work with, because you're always going to have some extra resin mixture, and then it goes to waste, once it starts to set up and cure. I'm going to go ahead and pour these both in. I will get that later. You'll notice the striations where the liquids, the hardener and the resin, aren't mixed. They're kind of cloudy and streaky. Now, sometimes we had two people doing, and one person will get a stick for theirs, and another person gets a stick for the other. It's really important that you really scrape and get everything, because a lot of times the resin's a little bit thicker than the other. You'll have one mixture a little bit thicker, and it kind of grabs the container. You want it to be very equal. So I'm trying to make sure I get everything out, scrape that popsicle stick. And that takes a few extra seconds, but that's important. The pot time for this, or the working time, isn't bad. It's maybe 30 minutes. And it starts to get, starts to set up a little bit after that. And it's only going to take us a couple minutes to mix it. Okay, I think I pretty much have. And I always just end up throwing these away. All right. So I don't want to whip it up. Figure eights are a good way to mix. You always want to be scraping the walls, but you should mix it for 2 minutes, which will feel like a very long time. And ideally, you should even pour this mixture into another empty clean cup and get a new popsicle stick, keep scraping it off. To get a good chemical mixture, you really should pour it into another cup. Again, I'm not whipping it. I can still see the streakiness. Maybe I can get the light to shine in it there. So figure eights. I always throw away the containers. I'm using disposables. Now this isn't the only way to mix it. If you had a container that was pre-measured, you could put the resin and then add the hardener right on top of it, as long as you're sure you're only adding, exact same amount, and then mix it right in that cup. But then still pour that mixture into a new cup. You're trying to get it consistently, just like one liquid. It doesn't look like it has any streaks in it. I still see some streaks. Oh, this is actually a lot of resin. I have a couple of silicone molds. One's a big cuff bracelet, and I have one that makes a lot of beads. If I have extra resin, which I think I will, more than what I really need, I will use it for that, because I hate to waste it. Pretty expensive. When you're going to an art store, let's say, to buy it, make sure you use the 40% off or the 50% off daily coupons that most art stores would have. Well worth it, because usually the epoxy resin isn't on sale, typically not, and then you could use that. You save a lot of money. Like I said, that's the longest 2 minutes. So. While I'm mixing, I'll bring into view, see, I'll just throw these away. Some of the things I have set up. Setting up is what takes the longest time, kind of planning out what you're going to do so that once you have the resin mixed, you're ready to go. So here's the bead mold. It's brand new, never had used it before. Here's the cuff bracelet mold in case I have a lot of extra. And then on my first 2 videos, I showed my kids how to make the bottle cap, the one my pinky's pointing at, the bottle cap bezel, where you kind of flare out the bottle cap with pliers. And then here's a ready-made bezel that I'm pointing to, and then there's another one down there, and just some various blanks, like a ring blank and a couple ring blanks and some other things, hairpin that have a bezel worked into them, which is really just a small miniature pan that has walls to hold the resin. And then these 2 I'm pointing at, I had a video that showed how to make those. A handmade kind of organic kind of wire shape, and you put packing tape. You probably can't see the packing tape, but packing tape is sticky side up, and that makes the back of the bezel. And I'll peel that off a day later, and then it'll be see-through, like this one, see-through, all the way to the back. And the wood one that might be a little harder to see here is set up the same way, on top of a sticky piece of packing tape that I've anchored down. Okay, looks like I'm good. It looks like it's pretty consistent. And now, remember, ideally, you would put it into another container. I'm not going to do that today. A lot of times in the classroom, if it works, we just do it. You just have to be really careful to really scrape. Then nothing's really caught up, or scrape that popsicle stick. Okay, looks good. Now, at this point, like if I have several kids that are going to use it, I may have a few different containers around where we would just pour into different containers, and every student could add glitter. They could add a little bit of a touch of oil paint or actual resin dye, and add colors and embedments, you know, things that you can just make it look interesting that way. Okay, I'm going to, let me see, I'm looking for my tweezers. Tweezers are helpful. Okay, on this one, I had used packing tape on both sides of this photo so that it wouldn't wet and go transparent, and kind of sealed it in like almost like laminating. And instead of putting it in there, which would trap air, I'm going to actually pour a little bit in, as neat as I can. I'm going to try to only go about halfway. I don't want to take it all the way to the top of the pan. And I'm going to go in at an angle. That's my goal. I'm trying not to trap air, which is easier. Not as easy as it sounds. I'm also trying not to slosh it around either. Okay, trying to get the resin above it without pushing it out too much. Now I know it seems easier to put it down at the bottom and then add the resin, but you might end up with a lot of air trapped. Okay. I should put less in there. I mean, it'll go down, but I'm kind of forcing it. Okay, I'm finally getting it down there, coaxing it. Like I said, probably a little bit less resin just to get it down in there, and then add a little bit on top, but it's fine. I just have to make sure it doesn't float up or anything. I know that says you can't glue it in. I've never tried doing it that way, but I would think that would work. Now, if your resin's like really cool and it's like trapping some bubbles or not able to get out, you can actually kind of put a little bit of heat on top of like a little, not a heavy duty blow dryer or heat gun, but a lightweight one, just kind of get a little heat on it, and the bubbles will rise up easier. Looks like it's staying down there pretty good there. Okay, and I'm gonna also, let's see, I'm gonna also pour a little bit in this one. Now there's packing tape on the back of it, so ideally it won't leak under. Never know. I actually had put a little bit of Elmer's glue and let it dry where the band of wire came back to itself, because resin can easily find its way out. I'm going to put a little bit in this one. I'm just using clear today. I actually prefer it, but sometimes I streak colors into. This one has packing tape also. I was going to pour enough to get that started. I'm working over a non-stick surface. This is wax paper. You can use parchment paper. You can use other things too, silicone mats. I can, if I needed to get some, just like a little bit, I could use my pipette while it's still nice and just liquidy. This is my Rain Blank. Now I'm trying to do a lot in a short amount of time, so you can kind of see me do different things. But, you know, take your time when you do it. Oh, there's one right here. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit in there. I won't put as much this time. Kind of overdid it before. And I'm going to get, this is just a piece of paper. I had sealed it with Elmer's glue on both sides, let it dry, you know, and then did it again to seal it. This time I'm just gonna get it on there and coax it in there. And some more on top. Now you can also do it in like 2 steps. You'd have to remix a little bit, but if you want something to be in the lower level, you could set it in and then give it maybe 5, 6 or so hours to kind of soft cure, and then add objects on top in a higher layer just to give it more depth. So there's a lot of neat things you can do and kind of experiment with. Okay, and let's see, there's some bubbles right there, but I can actually poke them a little bit if I want to. Now, that was just the main resin that I'm doing. You won't be able to see the whole process because it does take time. I have to kind of concentrate on that. But I've got some neat things like golden powders and gold leaf pieces and some natural shells that I can place in there. And I'll just do a little bit. I've already got my tweezers a little bit dirty there. So I'll see if I can pick up a piece of this. Drop it in there. So you can see you can do some really cool things like that. And then I have a little gold dust. Okay. And let's see. Okay, and I'm going to stop right there.